Okay, I'm gonna say it. Bitcoin is better than gold. That might be seen as a very bold and controversial statement, but I truly believe that Bitcoin is a superior investment option to the more traditional and widely accepted store of value that is gold. There's been somewhat of a rivalry between gold and Bitcoin, with many gold bugs pointing out the various flaws of Bitcoin and how it's just an online asset, it's not tangible, it's not real, you can't feel it. But ultimately, I'm going to explain why gold is going to eventually become obsolete to a significant degree and be overtaken by Bitcoin. So let's start by looking at the attributes of these two very different assets. Okay, so if we start by looking at the established history of these two assets, Bitcoin has been around for roughly 10 years. Conversely, gold has been around for about 40,000 years. So that really puts things into perspective. Gold has been around pretty much since the beginning of human existence. Within Paleolithic caves, they found gold shavings, pieces of gold. Gold has been desirable ever since human beings have come into contact with gold. It's not going to go away. People are always going to see gold as valuable. It's always going to be a store of value. So that's something gold does have in its corner. It really puts things into perspective that gold has really just been around for a very short amount of time, and that's why many people could see it as a fad, especially when compared to gold. So, I mean, we're going to put a tick next to gold in that area. Gold does have the established history in its corner. And tying in with that, if we look at acceptance, well, Bitcoin only has around 700 million active addresses. So again, this is another reason why people look to gold as a store of value on a very, very wide basis, because ultimately, the acceptance of gold is pretty much global. Everybody around the world knows what gold is, knows it's valuable, knows that jewelry is made of gold. And tying in with this as well is the fact that gold is tangible. Bitcoin is not tangible. Bitcoin is conceptual in nature. You can't hold Bitcoin in your hand. And most stores of value, pretty much all stores of value, historically, have all been physical in nature. Even when shells were used, those were physical in nature. You could hold them, you could store them as a physical object. And adding to that, gold has application. It's used in technology, it's used in electronics, and of course it's used to create jewelry. It's shiny, it's nice to look at. It feels good, it doesn't get tainted. So again, these are the advantages that gold has had historically, and the reason why it's still seen by many as a superior store of value. And this is really illustrated by the current market cap. Bitcoin has a market cap of 41 billion. Gold has a market cap which is 2,000 times higher, 82 trillion. So there's a lot more money in gold, there's a lot more money in the gold market, and these are the things that gold does have as an advantage over Bitcoin. So we're not just looking at how Bitcoin is better than gold, we're also looking at, gold does have a well-established history, and it will continue to be seen as a store of value to a certain extent. So moving on, part of what makes both Bitcoin and gold extremely value is their high stock to flow ratio, which is something that many other assets and forms of value do not have. They don't have a high stock to flow ratio, which is the amount of Bitcoin and gold currently in supply versus the amount of new Bitcoin and gold coming onto the market to meet the demand. So the higher the stock to flow, the more valuable an asset is, because the more difficult it is to attain that asset and get access to that asset. So currently, gold has a higher stock to flow, And that's part of the reason it is more widely seen as a valuable asset, even though most people aren't aware of the forces of stock to flow. It's simple supply and demand at work. But crucially, Bitcoin will eventually have a higher stock to flow than gold. After the halving in May 2020, the stock to flow will be around 56, so getting closer to gold. And then after May 2025, after the halving, the stock to flow of Bitcoin will be 121. So it's pretty clear that this very, very important attribute is going to quickly become in favor of Bitcoin. So the question is, do you want to invest in something which is already seen as a very attractive and attainable, unattainable asset? Do you want to invest in that after it's already reached that status? Or do you want to invest in it before that happens, where you can buy it cheaply and watch the price rise exponentially? I think I know what I personally want to do. I want to get large gains. So I'm going to put a tick in both columns, because ultimately Bitcoin does have that potential, and it does have that potential for growth in its favor. So moving on, another very important factor to consider is the level of scarcity. With Bitcoin, we know that there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin that are mined. And this is something that really affects the price of an asset. If that asset becomes rarer and rarer as time goes on and the demand is increasing. So Bitcoin really has that in its favor. For gold, on the other hand, although gold is a scarce asset, we really don't know how much more gold is going to be mined profitably with the technological advances that will come in the future. So we don't know how much more gold is going to come on the market and how the price is going to be affected. So that is something Bitcoin really does have in its favor. And a number of other factors that Bitcoin has in its favor is the fact that it's transactable. You can easily send $1 million to somebody using Bitcoin, and that can be done within an hour or a few hours. Whereas with gold, that's a much more complicated process. Additionally, Bitcoin is a medium of exchange. You can use your investment if you want to purchase things. You can send small transactions, very tiny transactions for very small things. You can spread your investment into other assets, as many assets as you want, because Bitcoin is divisible up to 1 million times per Bitcoin into 1 million different Satoshis. Gold, by comparison, is very difficult to transact. It's not seen as a medium of exchange, and it's very difficult to divide physically. It would be very difficult to quickly move your gold into many different assets and divide it up into small portions. That's very difficult to do. Gold does have liquidity, and in some instances for large transactions, gold does have that advantage because the price movement isn't such that when you're taking out a large amount of gold that you're going to see big swings in the price. So for large transactions, gold does have that in its favor, but that's becoming less and less important when compared to all of the advantages that Bitcoin has in our ever increasingly digital world. And for smaller transactions, Bitcoin really has more liquidity. If you want to liquidate a few thousand in Bitcoin, you can do that much faster than you would be able to do with gold. So really, I think that even on that attribute. But when it comes to portability, Bitcoin far outweighs gold, because with Bitcoin, your wealth is stored on the blockchain. If I move from country to country, I know that my wealth is going to be safe on the blockchain. With gold, however, you cannot take gold with you from country to country, from place to place. It's very cumbersome to move gold, especially if it's a very, very large amount of gold. So in all of those areas, Bitcoin really has a lot more potential going into the future in the electronic world that we're living in. With security, Bitcoin also has the advantage. With the right education, you can safeguard your Bitcoin on the blockchain as long as you keep your keys safe. Bitcoin also has a greater integrity than gold. With Bitcoin, you don't need to worry about somebody counterfeiting Bitcoin. You don't need to worry that you're going to be buying fake Bitcoin, especially if it's in large amounts. With gold, on the other hand, there's still problems with counterfeiting even today. Okay, so moving on to the next attributes, and what I believe to be the most important attributes, the return on investment. When we invest in an asset, we have the expectation that we're going to generate profit from that investment. And if we look at Bitcoin over the last 5 years, the return on investment has been 2,112%, compared to the very, very modest return on investment from gold, which has been only 18%. So when it comes to being an investment, gold does not even compare to Bitcoin. Looking ahead, we don't have a crystal ball to look through to tell us what will happen with the price over the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. But we can make an educated estimate based on previous performance and the current trends. People these days want everything to be instant. They want instant access. They want to be able to make instant transactions. They want flexibility. They want to be able to divide their money. It almost seems unimaginable that future generations would ever tolerate the limitations of using a physical object such as gold. Future generations will laugh at the idea of using a non-digital store of value such as gold. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't consider gold today. Gold still has its place in any well-rounded investment portfolio, and I personally still own some gold. Gold still offers a great hedge against a recession, partly due to its low volatility, and this is very, very important for people who are in their twilight years, who don't want to take any risks with their retirement fund. They don't have any time left to recover from any mistakes that they make. So gold for them is a very, very safe store of value. But as we look into the future, the new generations are not going to see gold as their favored store of value. And this is where we're going to see Bitcoin take over and Bitcoin become the dominant store of value. And we'll see the market cap of Bitcoin take away share from gold. Gold is quickly becoming a more and more obsolete and impractical form of storing value in the high-speed, digital and borderless world that we're living in. Now, over the next 5 years, we can estimate that we're going to see returns in Bitcoin anywhere from 900% to 1500%, and some people have estimated much higher returns than that. Conversely, if we look at how gold has performed even over previous recessions in the past, the returns could be more accurately estimated as 300 to 500%. Now, again, we don't have a crystal ball. This is not financial advice. None of us really know how each of these assets is going to perform over the next 5 years, 10 years. We can only go based on estimates. But I think certainly from what we've seen, we can give the edge to Bitcoin. And more importantly, if you're thinking further ahead than 5 years, further ahead than 10 years, we can only look at the advantages that Bitcoin offers that gold can never offer, and the limitations that gold has that Bitcoin does not have. So I hope I've explained here why gold is going to become obsolete and Bitcoin is going to become the sought after store of value and replace gold. But what do you think? Do you think gold is going to be the superior investment going into the future? Let me know in the comments section below. I'd love to hear what you think. If you found this video informative or interesting, please give it a like and subscribe if you want to see any more investment tips or analysis going into the future. Thanks for watching.